Hello and welcome to the Healing Insight podcast, episode 19, with me, Sarah Hunt.
And me, Jez Hunt.
Hello and welcome, everybody. It's lovely to be here again. Episode 19, Jay. Wow.
I know.
We'll soon be clocking up 6 months, won't we, of doing these podcasts? And what a way we've come, I feel. You know, that we've covered some very interesting topics, and it leads us to many different things, and hopefully gives the listeners lots of ideas of what they can do to help them to heal themselves.
Absolutely. Which is the point of why we decided to do this and work together to pull this together for everybody. And I'm hoping the listeners are really getting some benefit out of it. So
Yes, absolutely. So today's topic,
okay.
overwhelm. So this is something I've definitely experienced in my lifetime on more than one occasion, where I felt really overwhelmed by what's going on. It causes a lot of stress. It's very easy to end up in your head, and I just kind of feel like it's something worth exploring to try and help people to understand, firstly, why we get overwhelmed, and then secondly, what we can do to try and kind of get an understanding of where we're at and what it is that's actually causing the problem, so that we can make the changes that we need to lessen the stress and to clear that feeling of overwhelm, and to realize that we can achieve anything that we want to achieve.
Yeah, I think it's worth just clarifying what we mean by overwhelm, or certainly what I mean by overwhelm. It's an emotional state in which you're struggling to cope with or deal with your current situation. So
Yeah.
your current situation feels too much for you. You feel some words that might resonate with people is you feel buried in everything, buried under everything, or inundated with too much work or stuff.
Or you feel like you're drowning,
Drowning.
or like you can't cope with what's going on.
Yeah. And the thing is that triggers stress. So when we're in that emotional state, we get stressed because we're not coping. We feel we're not coping. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about overwhelm through this session. That's what we're talking about, is that just feeling of too much going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And that to me can often relate to self-worth, and recognizing, when you've got everything kind of coming on top of you, sometimes it's difficult to actually prioritize what you need to sort out first of all, and also it links into self-worth, and whether you actually feel that you can cope, you can sort this out, you can actually see a way forward. And it's very easy to find yourself kind of embroiled in the situation, rather than taking a step back and going, okay, what's actually going on here?
Yeah.
What do I need to look at? What is it? What is it that's really causing this? Is it that I don't feel that I've got the skills to deal with the situation? Is it that I'm my boundaries aren't as secure as they could be, and so other people are expecting too much of me? Is it that I'm expecting too much of me? There's so many different variables, I think, that can lead to a situation where people feel overwhelmed with what's going on around them.
Yeah, I think it's important to also just to recognize that society has not helped. Modern life with technology and automation and the whole thing of things on demand. So we're now starting to expect things instantly. We've got lots of distractions going on. We're being, with text messages and notifications and emails, and that we're being distracted by. So we're not getting a time. We're not unless we choose to encourage it and force it, we're not making the time to stay focused. We're being distracted too much.
And
So
bombarded as well. It's bombarded with information, isn't it? When you've got texts going off and notifications going off, it can also feel like you're being bombarded.
yeah,
To me, it
so
does anyway. It's like, oh,
yeah,
no.
no, I agree, and that then creates a feeling of not in control. So you feel out of control, or you can feel out of control, should I say. So when we don't feel in control of ourselves and in control of what we're actually doing, because we've got all these outside things demanding our attention. And I mean, just think the last couple of years where we've been, when people have been at home working, trying to work from home, with now the family being there all full time, and you've got all this extra stuff going on. And particularly over the last couple of years, overwhelm is something that's come up for me with my coaching clients a hell of a lot. It's the trouble is, it then takes us, it takes our focus off, and our ability, because we go into a stress response, we can't then think in the same way with the neocortex that we would if we weren't stressed,
Yeah.
because we're falling into the reptilian brain and the mammalian brain in terms of, so we're not able to think in the way that we do. It's more responsive, reactive rather than responsive. So we go into this panic mode, which means we can't think properly, which means we then can't prioritize. So we end up doing nothing rather than actually picking something and moving forwards with it, even if it turns out to be not the right thing. And we'll come on to some strategies that I can share, and I'm sure you can as well, energetically, but share some strategies of how to deal with this when it happens. But the first part of it is to recognize that you're in that state. And the counterintuitive thing to do, and the best thing we can do when we're in that state, is to stop everything and take a step backwards.
Yeah.
And say, well, I'm overwhelmed. I can't cope with this. I can't cope. Okay, just switch off from it all. Just take yourself to a quiet space. Leave your phone behind. Leave everything behind. Just go for a walk for 5 minutes. Just go and stand in the garden. Just take a break from everything around you where you would normally be working. Or, if the office, just go for a wander, go to the toilet. I don't know, whatever it might be that you need to do to get out of that environment that you're stressed in, and change your environment, and just take some time out of, okay, I'm okay. It's all right. And, just even if you start with some basic conscious breathing, intentional breathing, just being aware of your breath, just to bring you back into that present moment, back into now.
Yeah.
Because when you start breathing and focusing on your breathing, you're now increasing the oxygen levels going into your body, which clears any adrenaline, or helps clear any adrenaline and anything that might be caused in the body by stress, which means that you can now start to think. You will now be able to start thinking more clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. I've certainly had experiences of overwhelm with work, and what I used to do, if I experience it these days, I still try and do it, is I used to switch my phone off, turn my computer off, and because I worked from home when I was in sales. I'd have days where I worked at home, and sometimes I could get quite overwhelmed by the amount of pressure that was put on us to perform. And I would literally turn everything off, go upstairs, lay on my bed, and go into a meditation, and just allow myself to switch off completely, so that I could then think clearly and prioritize properly about what I actually needed to do, and where to do it. And if my boss needed to get hold of me, well, that was tough for that half an hour. He wouldn't be able to, and but not that it was ever a problem. But it was my way of actually taking myself out of that situation, so that I could try and just get myself more centered, and more able then to look at what was really going on. So yeah. And obviously it depends on your circumstances, depends whether you're working at home. Obviously, you can't go and lay down somewhere if you're in an office and do a meditation, but you can go and sit on top of the loo if you need to, and just take some deep breaths and really focus on your breathing and give yourself that few minutes to de-stress, so that you can actually look at things with more clarity,
Yeah.
and then be able to prioritize and work out, what is it that is essential that I do, and what can I actually leave today, so that you see a way forward without that kind of, I don't know where I'm going to start, I don't know what to do first, and like you said earlier, ended up doing nothing because you can't actually you just end up with brain fog, don't you? You can't actually work out what it is that you need to be doing to actually move things forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Picking something. So prioritization depends on circumstances and depends on what else is going on in that particular moment. And there are various tools for prioritization. You've got the Eisenhower matrix, sorry. And I mean, this we can put in the show notes if this will help people in terms of understanding priorities. The one thing that, just to go back to, you mentioned pressure to perform and being put under pressure. And you also mentioned boundaries right at the beginning when you were first talking. And those two link together in terms of, yes, okay, as employees, if we're employees, then we have responsibilities for our role. Well, any role we have responsibilities. But particularly when it's external, so someone's paying you to do something, then there are potentially pressures that they will put onto you, because particularly in a business environment, they are looking to make a profit, they are looking to make money, and they are paying you to do a job. So they are going to be putting pressure on you. The thing to remember is that there are very few things in this world that can't wait 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Very few things. I'm not, if you've cut a main artery and you're bleeding out, that can't wait. There are things that there are things that can't wait, but very few.
But responding to an email or responding to a text
exactly
can wait, can't
exactly
it?
Like you turning your phone off for half an hour, and your boss not being able to get hold of you, it's not really that critical. Not really. Most things can wait for you to take that step back and sort yourself out. And actually, if you don't, you're less likely to be able to move forwards anyway, because you're still in this panic state.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always found that I was far more productive when I took that half an hour out and did that meditation and then went back to work. I was far more productive than if I had just tried to kind of find a way through without de-stressing myself.
Absolutely.
So it was always, from my point of view, it was worth doing, because it meant that I was far more productive. So obviously that then had a knock-on effect for who I was working for at the time.
Yeah, and this links back to one of the core threads of this whole podcast series. We have to look after ourselves first. If we're not focused on us and what we need and making sure that we have what we want in all areas of our life, then we're not going to be performing at our peak. If we're not looking after our sleep, we're going to be tired. If we're not looking after our food intake, then we're not going to be performing bodily at our best. So we're more likely to suffer from fatigues or from illnesses, dis-ease, as we've talked about before. If we're not taking care of our mental state, then we are going to get more stressed and feel the pressures more than we would if we're actually just taking those 5 minutes out, 10 minutes out, 20 minutes out a day, or a couple of times a day to do some meditation or some deep breathing, or just go and be just do some conscious walking, or just going out and be in nature and be aware of everything around us. All these things we've talked about in
Yeah,
past
absolutely. Or
episodes.
just going and standing out in the garden,
Yeah,
sometimes just, and that's something I like to do sometimes is just to go and stand in the garden, breathe in. I love roses, so I've got lots of roses in my garden, and just breathe in the scent of the roses, especially this time of year when they're blooming, and just have that 5 minutes of, wow, actually, this universe is beautiful. It's wonderful. Look at the amazing things around me that just reminds us of what a beautiful world it is and can be.
yeah.
And that just takes the pressure off, doesn't it?
And here you
But
go.
but
Sorry.
I was just going to say, but I think, when I think back, the pressure to perform was probably coming from my perception, and we've talked about perception before, but my perception of what was expected of me from the company that I was working from the boss that I worked for. Um, and then I would put pressure on myself as well. So I wasn't only getting pressure from them because I'd got certain targets to hit, but then I was putting pressure on myself because I know when I was younger, I felt that need to prove myself. I
Sure.
needed to show that I was capable of achieving. And that then comes back to self-worth issues, which I know, I've gone back into my childhood and various different things. And I can see that my self-worth was never that good when I was younger. And it's something that I've spent a lot of time working on um, to build my self-worth so that I don't have this competitive nature that I used to have anymore that puts so much pressure on me.
Mm.
Um, it's we need to be in a space where we love what we do, so that when we love what we do, we are really in our heart space. And when we're in our heart space, we're at our most creative, we're at our least stressed, we are then able to achieve what it is we want to achieve with ease, rather than when we end up in our headspace with being a stressy Bessie, as I like to call them. Um, it just puts so much more pressure on us, and it's taking that moment to step back, relax into ourselves, reconnect with ourselves, center ourselves, um, get back in touch with our soul and what our soul wants, and what feels right in our heart, so that we can see the way forward.
Yes. Yeah. Getting back in the now, being in the moment. The more we can live in now, the easier life is. And the clearer it becomes, the clearer the things we have to do next. The more productive we are, the more creative we are, like you said. The more you can focus on what's happening now rather than worrying about, oh, I've got this deadline for Friday. Don't worry about Friday. Worry about today. You know, worry about what you've got. Not, you don't know. Don't worry about it. Even,
Yeah.
think about or work through what you need to do today. So things like prioritizing, goal setting, breaking things down into manageable chunks. These are all things that are very easily learned. It takes a bit of determination, I guess, to start doing something that you're not used to doing, to turn it into a habit. But once you've got moving with it, and once you've learned a different way of doing things, be it prioritizing or ways to work, it becomes second nature. It becomes a habit. It becomes something that becomes easier. Same with going into yourself, going into your heart zone, your heart space. It takes practice. It takes, it's not necessarily something we naturally think, oh, I'm stressed, let me sit and go into my heart space and get heart centered. When we've been on the healing journey I'm on, the healing journey you're on, when we have come across this and we do know about it, then yes, I do switch. So for me personally, I do switch into, oh, hang on, I'm back in my head again. Get back into my heart. I'm getting stressed. Okay, take that deep breath. Um, Whatever it is. If I can, then I'll go and meditate sometimes, and sometimes it's just breathing. But it is just getting into the now and being in the now as much as possible makes things a lot easier and a lot clearer in terms of what you need to do next, what's right to do next.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and it, um, it's so important to take that step back,
Mm.
even if it's only for 5 minutes. Just take that step back, and then look at, why is it I'm overwhelmed? Why do I feel overwhelmed? Is it because I'm fearful? Am I afraid of failing? Am I afraid of letting somebody down? Am I afraid of not achieving what I need to achieve? Am I, it can be so many different things, can't it? That's going on, and it's so important. And certainly from my point of view, when I've got somebody that's struggling with overwhelm like that, we look at, what is it that's going on? What is it that feels like it's pressure going on top of you? What is it that where's the fear coming from? Because really, when you're that overwhelmed, you've moved into a state of fear. You've moved out of your heart, out of
Yes.
that place of love. You've moved into a state of fear. So it's like, where's that fear coming from? What is it that's triggered that fear? Let's clear that fear energetically, so that the energy of it is gone, and so that you feel more relaxed and you don't have that fear anymore in the same way. And that's certainly, the kind of approach that I take with it when I've got a client who is really struggling. It's like, and it's kind of picking out, where's it coming from? And that's what I'm always looking for, is, what's the root cause of this? Where's it coming from? Do you know what's triggered it? Can you actually identify what's triggered it? Because if you can identify what's triggered it, then we can dig down into, what is the root cause of this? Where's it actually coming from?
Yeah.
Um, so because when you've got an understanding of where it's coming from, you can then do something about it. You can, and first of all, acknowledging that something's going on, acknowledging that you've become overwhelmed is a really important point. And then acknowledging that you need to go inward and find where it's coming from, is also important. And then it's the release that needs to come after that. But until you are willing to go inward to discover where it's coming from, you're not actually going to release that energy of that situation. And it's also about self-love, isn't it, as well? And you mentioned earlier on about the importance of, making sure that you've got time for yourself, that you
Mm-hmm.
have that time out to just have a breather in a few minutes, so that you don't get into a really stressed, overwhelmed state. And I would agree with that. But when you're in that stress space, you're in fear, and you're not in a place of love, and so you're not being loving towards yourself. You're putting too much pressure on yourself, perhaps. And I've definitely been guilty of that. When I look at my journey, I've been guilty of that on more than one occasion, where I've put too much stress on myself and been too hard on myself, and not taken that step back and actually gone, hang on a minute, where's this really coming from?
Yeah.
And that's quite a thing in itself, isn't it, to actually go, okay, I need to look at where this is coming from. But until you
Absolutely.
know where it stems from, it's difficult to actually clear the energy of it properly, so that it reduces the stress of the situation that you find yourself in.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't understand what the problem is, how can you deal with it? I mean,
Absolutely.
you might immediately recognize and acknowledge, I'm overwhelmed, I'm getting stressed, I've got too much to do. Okay. But yes, you have to dig down into it. I think one question that we don't ask ourselves enough is, okay, what would happen if I didn't do it? So this
Yeah.
this job that I'm supposed to be doing, this task I'm supposed to be doing, what would actually happen if I didn't do it? Really? Okay, my boss might get cross with me. But I don't know, whatever it is, the child might throw a tantrum. But look at what the actual outcomes are likely to be. Look at what the impact of you not doing it would be. it's not about not doing it. And I'm not suggesting you then don't do it
Yeah.
unless it is something that really doesn't matter. And maybe you're getting stressed about something that actually you shouldn't be worried about anyway. But if you look at the impact that would happen if you don't do it, it puts it into perspective.
Mm.
Which means then, yes, you're going into your head because you're thinking it through. But once you've realized that actually, all right, the worst case is if I didn't do it today, actually my boss wouldn't say anything because as long as it's done for tomorrow morning, he or she probably wouldn't even notice. So it just helps us take that step of, whoa, hang on a minute. This isn't as life critical. Like I said, right at the beginning, there are very few things in life that can't wait
Yeah.
a few minutes, half an hour, even a day or two.
Yeah, it's very true. But I think, if I think back from when we were children to where we are now, the pressure that's put on everybody, like you said earlier, to get things done. We've got to get things done. It's,
Yeah.
and because people are working, managing a family, running a house, that adds extra pressure, doesn't it, to things for everybody, because there's kind of like this situation, and I've done it myself, where I'm juggling too many balls. And
Yeah.
it's like the children have got to get to football, or they've got to go to karate, and I've got to get the dinner sorted, and I've only just come in from work, and the house is a tip, and certainly I, I don't want to be sounding as if I'm sexist, because I think it's as important for men to recognise when extra help is needed at home. But for women these days, when we were small, mum was at home, and most women stayed at home with the children, didn't they? Whereas now the situation is that women are having to work as well. That puts additional pressure on them, but it also puts pressure on their relationship with their partner as well.
As well as their
Um,
relationship with their children.
as well as their relationship with their children.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's no wonder that people, and not just women, but men as well, and children, get overwhelmed and really
Yeah.
stressed with the way that life has become. And I do feel that it was never meant to be like that. We weren't meant to be in this constant state of stress. We're meant to be here to enjoy each other, to learn from each other, and not be in that constant state of stress to actually achieve that. Um, you can learn so much being around someone who isn't stressed, who has time for you. Whereas when you are around someone that's overwhelmed and stressed, that they might be snappy and irritable, they won't perhaps listen, they haven't got the time to sit down with you and look at things that you need to do. And I'm kind of thinking here it's coming in from a child's perspective particularly here, and then that has an effect on self-esteem, self-worth, self-confidence, how people relate to each other. So it does have a big effect on the family unit and anybody else that you're connecting with when people get into a state of overwhelm. And that's why it's so important to actually take that step back, look at what's really going on, look at what's important, prioritize what you actually need to do today. And anything else, do you have? Well, I have a list.
Yeah.
I have a list of what needs doing the next day, and then prioritize what needs doing the next day, and then you can kind of move forward and do the things that are the most important for that day. And so take that stress off yourself, to allow yourself to be able to complete what you need to complete and achieve what you need to achieve, without feeling like you are disappearing under the mound of things that
Whatever.
need to be done, of whatever.
Yeah.
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 And the one of the important things is if you really are struggling in terms of prioritizing, even once you've taken your step back, even once you've had your breathing exercise or your meditation or you're standing in the garden or whatever it might be, if you really can't work out what is the most priority, what's the highest priority, then just pick one thing and start on it, because you will break out of the cycle of what do I do, what do I do, what do I do, and not doing anything. And at least if you start doing a task, once you start getting your stress levels back under control, once you start feeling back in control, you might then realize, oh, actually, this task isn't the one I need to be doing, it's that one. But you've broken that cycle. So just by doing something, you're going to help yourself more than just trying to analyze it all in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something.
So,
Sorry.
so something you mentioned earlier, which I know nothing about. So, you mentioned the Eisenhower matrix. Can you explain for listeners what it is? Because it's not something I've come across, and it sounds like it's something that you use with your coaching clients.
It is. So the Eisenhower matrix. So General Eisenhower, World War II, American general, hence its name. This is a way, like a grid. I'm just going to call it up. We will put this on the show notes so that you have it to hand, listeners. Why am I not finding what I need? Because I'm in the wrong place. Because, of course, this just proves that this is not rehearsed or anything like that, because I had no idea we were going to go here. So that'll be in there. Nope. So then it must be in there. Yeah.
Jeremy obviously has a very good filing system, where you can't find.
No, I'm there. So
that's me, actually, I think.
yeah, projection there, I think.
Yeah, could be.
So it's a grid of 4. You got 4 quadrants. So and you're basically measuring important and not important against urgent and not urgent. So you have 4 quadrants. So important, urgent is your quadrant 1, and this is your quadrant of necessity. And these are the things you have to manage. So this would include things like crises, medical emergencies, pressing problems, deadline-driven projects, i.e. if something's got to be done by 1 o'clock today, then that becomes an urgent important. So it could be last minute preparations for scheduled activities or anything like that. So that's your important, urgent. And those are the things you kind of have to do. So if there's a medical emergency or a crisis, you have to deal with it. So everything else gets dropped. That becomes your number 1 priority. On the right hand side, you've then got important but not urgent. So this is quadrant 2, known as the quadrant of quality and personal leadership. As I said, I'll put this document up or the diagram up on the show notes so that you can download it and use it if you wish. So quadrant 2, this is preparation, planning. It could be health and exercise, relationship building. It's things that they're not urgent, but they are very important. So if you're setting a goal, the goal setting and then working through your goals, you want to try and keep everything where you can into quadrant 2. So it doesn't become the urgent important, because that's when you can start having the extra stress. So ideally, you want to be focusing as much time as possible as you can into quadrant 2 activities. Okay. Quadrant 3 is not important, but urgent. So
how can it be not important, but urgent?
So interruptions, some calls. So your message app pinging at you on you, your email pinging at you. It's not necessarily important. So the urgency part of it is because it's an interruption. So you're being distracted from your mindset of where you were in that moment. So it's like, and we have this tendency of, if an email pings or a notification pings, we have to pick up our phone or our laptop and look at it. Oh, my phone's just buzzed. Who could that be? What could they be saying? Just because they've messaged us and we've had a notification in that moment, it might be important to them. It might be urgent to them, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's urgent to us.
Yeah.
But because of programming, because of everything we've had since we've had telephones in the house, and not just down the phone box that we used to have to go to as kids.
Yeah.
Because of that, if the phone rings, it's, oh, I have to pick it up. No, you don't. If you're in the middle of something, you don't have to answer the phone at all. It's your choice whether you answer the phone. So in the Eisenhower matrix, this is the quadrant of deception. So we get duped into believing or feeling that because a message has pinged on our phone that we have to pick it up. We have to pick up and deal with that. But then we get distracted. It's like, you know, going from a message and then we suddenly find that, oh, while I'm here, I'll have a quick look on Facebook. Oh, while I'm here, oh, look, there's a video I want. Oh, let's have a quick, that's only 2 minutes. And then you can find that, you know, half an hour or whatever of your time has just disappeared. So you want to avoid the quadrant of deception if you can possibly. And then the fourth quadrant is not important, not urgent. So this is stuff, trivia, junk mail, some phone messages, things that so watching mindless TV shows, watching endless YouTube videos. Some could also argue, as some of my clients have, social media generally. It's such a time waster, time stealer. I'm not saying it doesn't have its place. It does. And yes, I use social media, but I use it how I want to use it. I'm not swept into it, or at least when I am swept into it, because I do like animal videos, I'll be honest, then I do recognize, whoa, hang on whoa, stop. And sometimes I actually allocate time to do that sort of thing. But that's the quadrant of waste. And this is really, you just want to stop doing it as much as possible. The things that aren't productive, that are not urgent, not important, if you can, you want to stop doing them. Now, that's not to say we don't need downtime. We do need downtime. We do need recreation. That's in the quadrant 2. Important, not urgent. I think what went through my mind then was, well, it is urgent if you're not feeling in a good place. But if you're focused on quadrant 2, then you shouldn't be getting into that stressed, not good place.
Right. Yeah.
Does that make sense? So this is just, I mean, there are other ways of prioritizing, but this is one of the things that I found very helpful for me and certainly for clients, just in terms of basically rationalizing the task that you've got and just, okay, which quadrant does it fit in? Actually, why am I even doing this? I mean, so busy work, it's quadrant 4. Doing something just so that, oh, well, I'm busy. I'm very busy. Look at what I'm doing. I'm very busy. I'm ticking things off my list. But are they actually things either in quadrant 1 or quadrant 2? Because if they're not, why are you doing them? If you've got things in quadrant 1 or 2, so a reminder, quadrant 1 is urgent, important, so crises, medical emergencies, whatever. Those are things you have to do. They're not productive. They're not really going to help you move forwards necessarily, but you can't, you have to deal with them. You know, if your child falls over or is injured or whatever, you're clearly going to just drop everything and do that, or yourself or anyone else, you know. But, you know, so there are things that will take us away from being productive that we have to deal with, but we need to manage those. We need to learn to manage those so that, yes, we deal with them when they come up, but we're not letting things run into that quadrant. So if I've got a deadline for Friday, now bear in mind what we now Tuesday, so I've got 3.5 days to get to Friday. If I've got a deadline for Friday, the ideal is I keep it in quadrant 2. I work out what it's going to take for me to complete that by Friday, and then I break it down and I eke it out over the 3 days, so that I'm doing something every day towards it, so that it's calm, it's relaxed, I'm working towards it, rather than what a lot of people do. And I put my hand up to this as well. I used to do this.
I'm guilty.
Thursday night or Friday morning, very early, that's when I'd start the task. You know, so you're putting yourself under, oh, that's right, I've got till Friday to do it. Yes, you have, because that's when the deadline is. But what you've done is allow it to move from the not quadrant 2, where you should be focused, so it's calm and relaxed and you're being productive. You've now allowed it to get into the urgent, not urgent and important. So you go into crisis mode, you go into panic mode, the stress levels go up. What happens is that we have this to-do list that we don't deal with in the right way because we're not being productive. So everything starts moving into the quadrant one. Everything starts to become a problem, which is where overwhelm comes from. I've got too many things that are now urgent and important, and I don't know what to do for the best. I don't know which one to deal with now.
Yeah.
If we actually start focusing on being more productive and using the time that we've got, so setting realistic goals, end dates for doing things, and then breaking it down into chunks and then little chunks, micro chunks, nibbles, or whatever you want to call it, and then start doing those every day towards the goal, you're more likely to hit the goal less stressed and manage it than if you leave it till last minute and ignore it. So there's that side of it. Something else on the productivity side of it is something called the Pomodoro technique, which I don't know if you've come across this as well. And
No, I haven't. No.
okay. So the Pomodoro technique was developed by an Italian guy. It was an Italian student, and it was a way of studying. And it's called the Pomodoro technique because he actually used a kitchen timer that looked like a tomato. So that's how it became known as the Pomodoro technique. And basically it's dividing your work time, your focus time, into blocks. So the traditional Pomodoro technique is 25 minutes focused working, 5-minute break, 25 minutes focused working, and then you have a 5-minute break, but you also have a half-hour break. So it works out being 35 minutes break.
Okay.
So during the focused stages, you turn off everything that, not your laptop if you're using it. What I mean is you turn off notifications, you turn off your phone or stop it ringing. And for that 25 minutes until your alarm goes off, you focus on exactly the task you're meant to be doing and nothing else. You don't allow anything to distract you. Just 25 minutes. That's all it is. Then your alarm goes off. It doesn't matter. Even if you're in mid-sentence, you stop. You get up, you stretch, you wander away from your computer, you go and have a wee or whatever you need to do, just to take your mind off it. And then when the alarm goes at the end of that 5 minutes, you're back sitting at your desk, you're then back focused on what you need to do, and you do another 25 minutes. And you repeat this cycle. So you're doing 25 minutes, 5-minute break, 25 minutes, 5-minute break, half-hour break, 25 minutes, 5-minute break, 25 minutes, 5-minute break, half-hour break. Okay. And by doing this, you will be more productive in those 25 minutes when you're just focused on the one task. And that comes down to planning. So keeping it in quadrant 2, planning it out, working out what your 25-minute chunks need to be, and then just staying focused on that particular task. So
Yeah, I was just sitting here thinking that I kind of work like that myself without realizing that I do it.
yeah,
But I don't do it all the time, but some of the time I do.
I do it slightly. I personally, I focus better when I work better because I've tried different lengths of times. For me, I work 55 minutes, then I have a 10-minute break, and then I work 55 minutes, and then I have a half-hour break. So I work a 2-hour block with a 10-minute break in the middle, and then I have a half-hour break. And on a 7.5-hour work day, you could do 3 of those blocks.
Yeah.
If you see what I mean. Or in fact,
Yeah,
actually, it worked out 7 hours because the last half hour would be the end of your day. So you could do 2 hours focused work with 10 hours in the middle, half-hour break, 2 hours focused work with 10 minutes in the middle, half-hour break, and then 2 hours of focused work with 10 minutes in the middle. That's what works for me. And different people, I mean, I've got clients doing 35 minutes and, vary it. And even if you only try 15 minutes focused with a 5-minute break, just something to, but when I say focused, it means it doesn't matter if the phone goes, it doesn't matter if the doorbell rings, it doesn't matter. You stay focused on that task. No interruptions. As best as you can, because if there's a crime, if somebody's ill or whatever, you're expecting a phone call, then maybe doing focused work at that time is not the best time to do it. So, but those are just two techniques that can help.
Wow. It's given us some real food for thought, hasn't it? I think, yeah, it's kind of like flagged a couple of things up to me as well that perhaps I need to look at. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
There's always something that we can find that we need to be looking at for ourselves. Yeah, interesting. But I think some good ways that we've discussed that can help people to get out of that state of overwhelm, so that they can take that step back, get themselves centered again, and back into their hearts and out of their heads, and so into a space where they feel that they can actually cope with what's going on, and they know how to deal and what to deal with first of all, to be able to move forward.
One thing, just very quickly before we go, one thing that did come up, it was when you were talking about when you're at work. It was a combination of two things. So when you're at work, then you're not necessarily able just to nip out and go and stand in the garden. And it was you talking about standing in the garden, smelling roses. What you can do if you're working, or even actually if you're just out and about, is take a photograph of said roses or whatever it is for you, and just use that as a visualization. So if you're out and about away from home, go and shut yourself in a toilet cubicle or whatever, get your photograph out. So you have it a little tiny, it's only pocket size, something you have in your wallet or your purse or whatever on your body. Just pull it out and just visualize yourself looking at that picture, standing in the garden in front of them. Take a breath in, visualize. We talked about visualization being more than just the optics. It's all of the senses in that episode. So, get that smell into you. Remember what that smells like of the roses. It can just help take you to that place without you actually having to be in that place.
Yeah, absolutely.
So just something else
Good
that you can use
to try out, really.
and just use your photo as a trigger, to bring that place of safety, that place of love and calmness and peace back to mind for you and bring you back into the now. So there you go.
Fabulous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very interesting topic, as they all are.
Bit longer this week.
Yeah, but it kind of felt, like we needed to just go with the flow with it. So great. Thank you very much for your time, Jay. And we look forward to being back again soon.
Indeed.
So it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.